The forces of good and evil, the origin, arrogance and humility, goodwill. Revelations of Jesus Christ from 1884 to 1950. The origin of good and evil. Thus saith the Lord. Upon forming you, the Father placed you on the first step of the ladder, so that, as you traveled that road, you would have the opportunity to truly know and understand your Creator. Yet only few began the journey of ascent from the first step. Most gathered in disobedience and rebellion, making poor use of the gift of freedom and ignoring the dictates of the conscience. They allowed themselves to be dominated by the material in order to create a force through their vibrancies, the force of evil, digging an abyss into which their influence dragged their brothers. They began a desperate battle between their weaknesses and perversities and their yearning for elevation and purity. The original sin did not spring from the union of man and woman. I, the Creator, established that union, telling them both, grow and multiply. That was the first law. The sin originated in their abuse of the gift of free will. The flesh fears to struggle with the spirit and seeks a way to tempt it with the pleasures of the world, to impede its freedom, or at least to postpone it. See how man carries his own tempter within him. That is why I have said that when he can manage to overcome himself, he will have won the battle. In this time, when even the air, the soil, and the water are poisoned by the evils of men, how few there are who will not let themselves be contaminated by evil or darkness. The clamor of humanity comes to me, the anguish of children and young people, of men and women of mature age, and even of the elderly rises up to me. It is a voice that calls for justice. It is an invocation of peace and mercy that the Spirit utters, because the seed of love in this world has been lost. Do you know where that love is now? In the depths of the human heart, buried so deep that he cannot find it, because hatred, ambitions, science, and vanity have drowned the seed, and there is no spirituality or mercy. The cup of bitterness continues to be filled, and the world drinks of it, to the very dregs at the bottom. From altar to altar, from rite to rite, from sect to sect, men go in search of the bread of life without finding it. Faced with disappointment, they become blasphemers, walking aimlessly along the roads and living without God, without law. But remember, my people, among them are the great spirits, for among them I discover the prophets and the disciples of the Holy Spirit. The men of denominations accept the power of evil, personifying it in human form. They have given it various names and attribute a powerful kingdom to it. Men feel fear when they think it near, not knowing that the temptation lies within their own passions and weaknesses, so that both good and evil are active inside men. Evil predominates in the world during this time. It has created a strength, a power that is made manifest in all, even in the spiritual, for there are legions of imperfect and troubled spirits inclined to evil and vengeance, whose strength is joined with human wickedness, creating the kingdom of evil. This is the power that rebelled against Jesus in the second era and showed him its kingdom. My flesh, sensitive to all, was tempted, but my spiritual strength overcame the temptation, because I had to be the victor over the world, the flesh, temptation, and even death. For I was the master who came to live among men, to give them an example of strength. You can recognize my presence by the peace you feel in your spirit. No one but I can give you true peace. A spirit of darkness could not give it to you. I tell you this because many hearts fear the subterfuges of a tempting spirit that men have given life and form, according to their imaginations. How erroneously the existence of the Prince of Darkness has been interpreted. How many have come to believe more in his power than in mine? And how far from truth men travel in this belief. Evil exists. From it, all vices and sins have proceeded. The sinners, or rather those who practice evil, have always existed on earth, just as in other worlds or dwelling places. Yet why personify all existing evil in one being, and why do you have it confront the divinity? I ask you, what is an impure being compared to my absolute and infinite power? And what does your sin mean to my perfection? Sin was not born in the world. Upon springing forth from God, some of the spirits remained on the side of good, while others, deviating from that path, created another, a path of evil. The words and parables that were given to you in a figurative sense, as revelations in earlier times, have been erroneously interpreted by humanity. The intuition that men had about the supernatural was influenced by their imagination, and, eventually, sciences, cults, superstitions, and myths were formed around the force of evil, all of which has survived to this day. Demons cannot spring from God. They were forged by your mind. The concept you have of that being which you place as my adversary at every step is false. I have taught you to watch and pray, to free yourselves from evil temptations and influences, which may arise from human beings, just as from spiritual ones. I have told you to superordinate the spirit over the flesh, for the latter is a fragile creature who is in danger of stumbling at every step, if you do not watch over it. The heart, the mind, and the senses are the open door for the passions of the world to chasten the spirit. If you have imagined the beings of darkness to be monsters, then I see them only as imperfect creatures, to whom I offer my hand to rescue them, for they too are my children. Whenever you do good, you say, I am noble, I am generous, I am charitable, that is why I do this. I tell you, if you did these works in the name of the Lord, you would indeed be humble, for the goodness originates in God, and He has bestowed it upon your spirit. Therefore, whosoever attributes his good works to his own human heart is denying his own spirit, as well as he who provided those virtues. In contrast, when you do something evil, you wash your hands like Pilate, and attribute the deed to the Father, saying, It was the will of God, it was written, God wished it so, it is fate. You say that nothing happens without the will of God to excuse yourself for your errors. Yet, truly, I say to you that you are wrong, for your errors and your pettiness do happen without the will of God. Do you see how the Omnipotent One never imposes himself on you by force through his power? No, that is what you do with your weaker brothers. Truly, I say to you, the evil, impurity, and lack of harmony are yours. The love, patience, and serenity are God's. Whenever you love, it is the Creator of your spirit who inspires you. But when you hate, it is you yourselves, your weakness that impels you, and in the end, ruins you. Whenever something bad happens in your life, you may be sure that it is of your own making. Then you ask, why does God allow this? Does He not suffer for our sins? Does He not weep upon seeing us weep? What would it cost Him to save us from these falls? I tell you this, as long as you will not love, God will be something you cannot understand, for the magnanimity of your Creator is beyond your comprehension. Become strong, great, and wise. Learn to love. When you love, you will not have the infantile tendency to analyze God. For then you shall behold and feel Him, and that will satisfy you. Arrogance and humility. Make of humility one of your greatest allies to achieve spiritual elevation, for the gates of heaven, which is the kingdom of the Spirit, are completely closed to the arrogant. They have never passed those gates, and they never will be able to. However, when the arrogant become humble, I shall be the first to praise them, and it shall be my mercy that opens the gates of eternity for them. Now follows another one of my lessons, disciples. Truly, I say to you, that when you believe yourselves to be strong, great or exalted, you distance yourselves from me, for your pride drowns the feeling of humility. But when you consider yourselves small, when you recognize that you are atoms in the midst of my creation, then you grow closer to me. For in your humility, you admire me, love me, and feel me close. Then you think of all that is great and unfathomable contained within God, all of which you desire to know and understand. It seems to you as if you were hearing the echo of divine whispering in your spirit. Disciples, when man has a true understanding of the works he has performed, then he will not allow himself to be blinded by vanity. He knows that if that ignoble sentiment enters his being, his intelligence will be clouded, and he will not be able to advance on the path of development. He will become stagnant and succumb to lethargy. Vanity has ruined many men, toppled many flourishing nations, and brought your cultures low. While the peoples held work, competence, and progress as their ideals, they knew abundance, splendor, and well-being. But when pride led them to feel superior, their ideal of elevation was exchanged for the insatiable ambition to keep everything for themselves. Without wishing to or realizing it, one step after another, they began to destroy all they had built, eventually flinging themselves into the abyss. The history of humanity is full of such occurrences. For that reason, I tell you that it is right for a people of great ideals to arise in the world, who, while always being conscious of their good works, do not become vain because of them. This way, their progress will not be halted, and the splendor that was already achieved will only be surpassed tomorrow, and it will continue to grow in the future. Speaking to you in this way, I do not seek to inspire only material ambitions in you. I wish for my words to be interpreted justly, so you will know how to apply them to the spiritual as well as to the material. Vanity does not afflict men only in their material lives. As proof of what I tell you, look at the falls and failures of the great denominations, rotten at the base by their vanity, arrogance, and false exaltation. When they believed themselves to be at the height of their power, Someone had come to awaken them from their slumber, making them see their errors, deviations, and how they distanced themselves from the law and the truth. Only through true knowledge, compliance with my law, and faced with the conscience can humanity arise to an elevated life. For the conscience, which is my light, is perfect, serene, and just, and it shall never be vain nor lose its way. The good, the man of good will. Get to know me, all of you, so that none may deny me. Recognize me, so that your concept of God is founded on truth, so you may know that wherever goodness is manifested, there I am. Good cannot be confused with anything. Good is truth, love, mercy, and understanding. Good is clearly discernible and unmistakable. Recognize it, so you will not err. Each man may travel along a different road, but if all of them meet at the same point, which is goodness, then they will come to identify one another and unite. But this will not happen when they try to deceive themselves, masking the good with a veil of evil and disguising the evil as something good, as is the case among men of this time. For nearly 2,000 years you have repeated that phrase which the shepherds of Bethlehem heard: peace on earth to men of good will. But when have you ever put your goodwill into practice to make yourselves worthy of peace? Truly, I say to you, you have rather done the opposite. You have lost the right to repeat that phrase. That is why I have come today with new words and lessons, so that it will not be the phrases or prayers that will be engraved in your mind, but the essence of my teaching, which will penetrate your hearts and spirits. If you wish to repeat my words as I have come to reveal them to you, you may do so, but keep this in mind, for as long as you do not feel them, they will contain no virtue whatsoever. Pronounce them with gentleness and humility. Feel them vibrating within your heart, and I will answer you in such a manner that your whole being trembles. I say once more, peace to men of good will, those who love truth, because they do something to adhere to the divine will, and those who take refuge in my protection must necessarily feel my presence in their human lives, as well as their spirits, struggles, needs, and trials. The men of good will are children, obeying the law of their father. They walk on the right path, and when they suffer greatly, they raise their spirits to me, desiring forgiveness and peace. They know that many times pain is necessary, and thus they endure it with patience. Only when it becomes unbearable do they beg for the weight of their cross to be alleviated. Lord, they say to me, I know that my spirit requires purification and suffering in order to develop. You know better than I what I need. You cannot give me anything that I do not need. As such, may your will be done for me. Blessed are those who think and pray in this way, for they seek the example of their Master to apply it to the trials of their lives.